theyeshiva.net.
K'moishu b'nisayin d'Avram. K'moishu b'nisayin d'Avram v'nolav Shalom, just as it was with the test of Avram. Shaydei shamad b'nisayin. When he stood up to the test. Bal gilui eirein soif habilti bal gvul chuli. K'moishu nisbayir la'el. As he stood up to the nisayin, he arrived, he touched the revelation of the Eir of Ein Sof, which is infinite, which is beyond the limits of nature. K'may kein hu lefi erech b'chol nisayin v'nisayin sha'adam oimed neged levushe hateva v'anhagas ha'olam. Lefierech, relative, commensurate to every person and every situation, there's a similar quality. Every single time a person stands up, a person faces down, a person does not surrender, does not get lost. In every single nisayon, every single trial or challenge where a person stands up against what seem like the powerful garments of nature and how the world runs. Shehin halemes v'hastedim. When he stands up to the various concealments and blockages, disturbances that want to overwhelm him, shemoinim u'ma'akvim etorah v'avodah, which essentially stop him or prevent him or block him from Torah and avodah, all aspects of avodah, of growth, of avodas Hashem. There's a similar process that happens. V'hu, when he, Oymid, stands up, neged, against kol meineo ma'akiv, everything that prevents, internally or externally, shaloi liyis nifrid melakus chas v'shalom, not to become separated, not to become fragmented, not to lose it, not to become detached from truth, from melakus, from godliness. V'yasik b'torah v'avodah kol echad v'echad lefi erkoi. He remains completely connected. Again, every person according to his capacity, to his nature, according to his identity and his matzav. But he remains completely connected to Torah and avodah. Harehu ba'al yidei zeh l'gilui oir elyon shalamayla me'atava. He reaches through this, only through this, the Gili of Oir Elyon, the revelation, the experience of the ultimate true divine light of Hashem Havaya, which is beyond Teva. Not only the mashal, but also the nimshal. And this we say, this was one of the purposes of the neshama coming down here to the world. Sheyarda beguv gashmi. The neshama came into a physical body, uba'olam gashmi, and it descended into a material world. Asher mugbal ma'oid b'anhagas hateva, which is excessively defined, limited by the hanhaga, by a behavior that we call teva, nature. That's how the whole world runs. That's the reality that the neshama observes, both in the body, in the internal world, and in the whole world. And often it appears and it seems to the person, based on the external behavior of the world, that the only way to survive is if he lives in this and this way. That's the only way to deal and to be successful in this type of environment. Kamoy, for example, be'esik maso mata. Comes to business, maso mata means business. Shenid bebenafshay, a person starts believing, starts thinking genuinely. Shetzarich lahashkim ulahariv boy. That the first thing you wake up in the morning, you have to be immersed in the business. The last thing you do at night, you have to wake up with it and go to sleep with it. There's a big world out there, full of sharks. The only way you'll be successful is if the whole day you'll be completely immersed by the stress of the business. From your whole day schedule, you're going to take 1 hour for yourself, meaning for your inner self, l'espalel to daven, or v'lilmud Torah to learn yafsid bazeh. You're going to lose the game, you're going to lose the race. It's a rat race. You have to adjust. You can't decide that you live in heaven and you live in a tranquil world and a serene world. Maybe you'll have that. This is a real world. There's rules of the game. And if you're not in this game, if you're not in the race, you come last, you lose. That's that's the natural instinct that a person has. And he says weiter, another thing he thinks, you always have to be sly. Tachbulas shyness means you have to do a lot of different types of tricks. You have to always scheme, be outsmart. Tachbulas shyness, all these types of tricks and schemes, binyane yesek when it comes to business. It's very powerful. You lose your integrity. You can't be a truthful person. Because if you're a truthful person, again, you're going to lose the game. This is a game where the sly one wins, the shrewder ones, the one who knows how to, what we call the direi, the machna direi. So if I remain true to who I am, true to my soul, true to my God, you lose the game. If you follow emes, lo yarviach, you're not going to gain anything. You're going to remain the same. You're going to remain the same. Or even worse, you won't be maviach. You're going to lose everything. Why? Because this is how things work. There's a world out there that is fixed. And this is how it happens. And this is how things run. And therefore, if you don't play this game, you're going to lose. You certainly won't gain. This is the perspective that is very intrinsic. It seems so real. It seems so natural to any person who's in this world and wants to make it. This is nidmet, seems this way, but it's not the emes, it's not the truth. It's a cover-up for truth. The etzem hanhagas ha'olam mitzad hatzmai einu menaged le'esek teirav avodah v'leilech b'darkei emes. Tzimtzum is not kipshutai. This is God's world. It's not how the world runs. The etzem hanhaga of the world. It's not intrinsic to the world. Does not oppose a person who's completely immersed in emes, in Torah, and avodah, following the ways of truth. As we explained, the kol ha'al bershas v'alemus einam malim mastidim be'emes. There's no real hester. There is what looks like a hester. The whole idea that we've been discussing about the teacher and the student, that even when the idea is completely obscured, from the teacher's perspective, it's not obscured. Even when he's only giving him a little trickle of information, everything is there. And even when he encloses it in a mashal, which is a foreign substance, and you don't see anything. And many people may misconstrue and not even reach from the, they may even forfeit the mishal. But from the teacher's perspective, there's no hester, and therefore from the student's perspective, there also really is no concealment.
So is the challenge when you have to deal with 11, have to become like 11?
Right. Yeah. On one level, yeah.
So he doesn't just mean in the pre-Simpson world when he says Etzem Hagasola.
Right.
In the post-Simpson world,
yeah.
When you look
Etzem Hagasola means the real world. The real world. That's what it's all concealments, emes. It's all nisyonis, it's all challenges that make the statement that this world, that life is divorced from its source. That a person, a body, a guf, a neshama, a mind, a person is divorced from the source, and therefore the person falls into that orbit, to that trap. But he says all the halbashas, all the halemus, einam malimim mastidim be'emes. Of course they're malimim and mastidim, but they're not malimim and mastidim be'emes. There is a helam and hester. If there wouldn't be concealment, then nobody would think of this. The fact that we think this way is because there is a helam, of course. It says einam malimim mastidim be'emes. There is a concealment. There is a big concealment. There's a reason to think that if you lie and you cheat and you scheme and you lose your integrity, you'll be more successful. There's a reason. So a person once told me, I said, he came to ask me something about something he did. So I said, why did you have to do this? He said, listen, I'm surrounded by sharks. He said, if I'm not a shark, I get eaten. That's it. Very simple. I'm surrounded by sharks. When you're surrounded by sharks, you got to be a shark yourself. Those were his words. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, I think I told you the word, yeah. A Yid once told me. Mamish fits, right? The Pasuk in Parshas Mishpatim. V'im shlosh eila lo yasala. I asked him, what's his philosophy in business? So he says his philosophy is a Pasuk that he learned in Parshas Mishpatim. V'im shlosh eila lo yasala. V'yotza chinam ein kasef. Literally it means, if the master doesn't do these three things for his maidservant, she goes out free without money. She just lets him go. She's a free bird. Shlosh in Yiddish is dirai. Okay? So for those of us who speak Russisch, Litvish, Yiddish, so we say direi. Direi means to twist things, to spin things. But those who speak a good... So we have a difference between direi and dirai. Dirai is a number, and direi is a direi. But in other forms of Yiddish, it's both dirai. So he said, "V'im shlosh eila la yasala." If you don't do a dirai, v'yotza chinam ein kasef. You go out without any money. If you don't dirai, v'yotza chinam ein kasef. You go out broke. So the halemas v'estadim, there are concealments. But he says, "Eina malim mastidim be'emes." It's a superficial perspective. Meaning, it's not what's really going on. Kiyim, tachlus, hakavona, there's an objective here. Just like the objective with the student is. That over the years he should unravel the full depth of the truth, and from the mashal come to the nimshal, and through that he reaches the ultimate core. So here too, the tachlus, hakavona is sheyamay neget kol meineyo ma'akev. Not to surrender to any one of these challenges and tests, but to stand up to all of the concealments that seem so powerful. V'yispalul k'diboy. The person should be able to daven k'diboy. K'diboy is an expression in Gemara in Ksuvos. K'diboy means k'diboy, as it should be. V'yasik b'Torah b'chol yom k'fi ha'kviyas sheyasel atzma. And to immerse himself in Torah every day according to the kviyas, according to the appointments, to the time, set aside times that the person makes for himself. Umidvar sheke yirchak, and he should remain completely remote from any utterance of a lie. Though you live in a world of lies and white lies, this person should never lie. V'chein yizar mitachbulas. Person should also be very cautious from living a life of schemes and tricks. Ki im yelech b'toim u'be'emes. The way to live is with time. Time is sincerity. Time come the word tmimus, tamim tiya, wholesomeness. With wholesomeness, when you're delaying, you're never wholesome. You're a fragmented person. This one I say this, and this one I say this, and this one I mean this, and this one I mean this. But time means there's a sincerity, there's a wholesomeness. I don't lie, I don't cheat, I don't mean this, I don't delay here, I don't delay there. It's a time, it's a sincerity. Ube'emes, it's a truthfulness. There shouldn't be any glimmer, any ray, any expression of isur, of prohibited maisalach in his business, chuli, etc., etc., which could often be a nisayan. The person has a nisayan because the offers that are existing, the temptations that are existing. We have some seasoned businessmen here sitting in this room. There are often some seasoned temptations and various opportunities that would seem to be no-brainers, and therefore can often be a nisayan. You look at other people, you look at your neighbors, you look at chaverim. Yes, somebody once got up and he told his crowd, he said, Kinderlach, as if it nish gamvinen, but nish tappen. Children, if you're not going to steal, you're not going to have. It's very simple. So there's a lot, What does Rashi say?
In Russia.
Oh, in Russia, yeah. At the black market,
Just
yeah.
in Russia.
Well, this was in Russia. This is 1897 in Russia.
On Army communism. That was a great plan.
Yeah, well, this was before. This was before the Bolshevik Revolution. The Bolshevik Revolution was 1917. This Maamar was said 1897. But the Tsarist regime is eigentlich gewesen King an Eden für jeden.
Doesn't this approach, it's endless, but since it can't be squared with reality, doesn't it seem to be, and I say this with the greatest respect, and I actually have been white-hearted.
Mm.
In other words, if you really want something to make a math out of your friend, that it can be walked on, that's, I mean, if you're trying.
I think it's the other way. I think people come to respect you much more. I think you're actually more successful.
The truth prevails, and that's the only true success. That's endless. But in the meantime, did you ever see someone that had been upslugged, and upslugged by the reality of sheker? And yeah, 20 years from now, the emes comes out. But the guy's a korban. So how, you tell him, is this like a service? It's like a little bit of a comfort for the guy while he's in the trenches? I don't get it.
I'm not a businessman, so it's very hard for me to answer the question.
I'll give you an example. Someone goes through a bankruptcy for years.
Yes, I understand. Yeah,
He stole his apartments and he ends up in a chapter 11 and he's a debtor.
yeah.
People go to jail. It's the worst kind of, it's
Not
the
for
worst
being
kind of
honest.
scenario. So you have to tell that guy, stick to your emes, and he does. So that's his
Right.
consultant. So he's actually a success. It's not like he.
Yeah.
That's
I guess sometimes the Nisayan stretches for longer, but it's a Nisayan.
But Rabbi, the real corruption within the Rabbanis, you have like a basin that's corrupt. That's even worse. We're not talking about business people. We're talking about people that are really, you're supposed to respect and come to the table and they're sheker.
Yeah.
That's the bigger problem. In business, we understand you have to have a couple of different shades.
Sometimes religion is also a business.
So 100%.
I hear
Just two. What was that?
501c3. It's called 501c3, non-for-profit.
So, Rabbi, what about deception of the Torah? You have Yaakov and his father, and then we have Moshe keeps telling Pharaoh just for 3 days, just for 3 days.
But that's Al
That
Pi
could be
Torah.
explained. That could be explained.
No, you're right. You have to be careful. There's times Torah, for example, says mutar l'shanos mipnei hashalom. Shalom, so for shalom bayis, different things, but that's Al Pi Torah. It's not because the person is a dishonest person, and you see it immediately. It's hard for them, but this is the appropriate thing. The same Torah who says midvar sheketerchak says in this situation mutar l'shanos, you're allowed to deviate. And it's very limited situations, prescribed situations for a particular purpose, then that's part of Torah's emes. Then that's part of the truth of Torah. It's not a deviation of truth. Like it says the difference of Moshe and Aaron, how Aaron used to behave and so forth. When a person withstands the Nisayan and all of these types of things, what happens is he breaks through the shell. He breaks through the husk of Teva. He breaks through the concealment. Because the whole Nisayan was really only coming from the concealment that it looks like Elokim conceals Havaya, but really it's not. Really, it's just an opportunity to experience Hashem in a particular way. Through this medium, through this instrument. It's not really a Helam. The whole Helam is just there to be able to channel it through a certain way, so when a person can break through that husk, it allows him to experience a certain relationship with godliness that he could never experience without it. He reaches the Oir Elyon Shalamayla Mehateva. Valpi Pashat Tuza, Valpi Pashat, even on a simple level. What he said now is a little more abstract. He said, Alpi Pashat, even Alpi Pashat, who's Atzman. This fact itself, just itself. Sharaya Be'enav, you see with your own eyes, Gam Shemisnaig Al Pi HaTorah VaHaMitzvah. That even when you behave according to Torah mitzvah v'oisik b'Torah v'avodah, and you're immersed in Torah and avodas Hashem, she'ein zal pi chitzonius an hagas ha'olam, even though so many others, it seems like it's not consistent with the external behavior of how the world should be. Umikol makom einay mafsid b'zemu umechas v'shalom. one sees in the long run they don't lose anything. God forbid. Not only that, not only that, a person starts feeling in himself a higher relationship, a higher. There's a certain urge, a certain light that comes into a person's soul. His entire hashpa, the flow of energy, and the chiyus that he receives, a person starts experiencing an a divine light that is beyond the restricted light and the behavior of the world. There's a certain consciousness that a person has a power to live with as a result of withstanding these nisyonos. And it's always commensurate with your avoid and with your toil, but commensurate with that, he ascends deeper and deeper, one step after another step, higher and higher again, like going back, tracing back the mashal all the way back to the nimshal. He reaches deeper and deeper, because the nisyonos also often come in different layers and different facets and different fashions, like layers of an onion. So you peel one, but then there's another one to peel. Like we spoke with Shlomo HaMelech, the 3,000 mashalim. Each mashal garbed another idea, and the mashal was a garb for another mashal, until you could come back to the original nimshal. V'zeu inyan ha-nisyonos. And this is the concept, the inyan, the function of nisyonos mashakasav. This is what the pasuk says: Ki menasa Hashem Elokeichem eschem ladas. Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Jewish people Hashem sometimes is menasa. So the word Manasseh comes from the word Nisayan, test. But Manasseh also comes from another word. Manasseh means to lift up. There's an expression in Yeshaya, Arim Nisi ala Harim. I will lift up my banner on top of the mountains. In Lashon Kodesh, Manasseh means to lift up something elevated. Ki Manasseh Hashem Elokeichem eschem ladas. V'nasata oisei al nes. Right, you should take the copper, the v'samta oisei al nes. Aselech hasara v'sim oisei al nes. Hashem tells Moshe in Parshas Chukas, right, to make a serpent and to place it on a nes. On nes means on a pole, on top of a pole. What's the connection between nes and nes and nes? 3 different words. Nes is a miracle. Nes is a pole. On top of a pole, it should be very high. And nes is a test. How did Lashon Kodesh put these 3 words into one? It seems completely different. Nisayan is the opposite of a miracle. Nisayan means that it's a test, it's not a miracle. If it was a miracle, it wouldn't be a Nisayan. And then you say Nisim are miracles. And then you say Nes is an elevated pole. The emes is it's all one akuda. Every Nisayan contains within itself the opportunity, the calling, the potential for a whole new type of elevation, for a whole new type of hisalus, for a menasa Hashem Elokeichem, v'alekim nisa savram. Here again, there's nisa as tested, and that itself is an opportunity for a whole new type of transformation that could never come about without it. The tachlis hakavana, that the objective is b'chtei lavoi l'bchinas gilui ein sof shalamayla mehatav, to be able to reach the Ein Sof beyond, completely beyond what has been channeled through your teva, through your comfort zone, through what you're used to. Just like by the test of Avram, the same is true with every single Nisayan, as we explained. What comes out from all of this, means the summation, what emerges from the entire discussion, Mikol Hamizbayer La'el, from everything that has been explained and explored above, who is the following: Shezeh Kol Avodah Sa'adam, that this constitutes the entire avodah of a person, Liyached Havaya Ve'elikim, to reveal the unity, to unify what we call the name of Havaya and Elikim. What's Pshat Liyached Havaya Ve'elikim? It's not just words and names to unify names. It means Vuhu. What does this mean? Very often people who grew up in certain circles hear a lot the word Yichudim. I don't know how many of you grew up in those places, but some of you hear the word Yichudim. unifications. So it sounds like to most, it's for mystical Kabbalists who know how to unify names, and it's like some form of spiritual, mystical, something that seems like magical stuff. But this is the opposite of everything that's being explained here. So he says, L'yachid havaya v'elikim doesn't mean it's unifying names. It's rather, the entire journey of life. It's, as he puts it, kol avodas ha'adam. It essentially constitutes the entire work of the human being. V'hu sheyeda ne'emana l'yachid is not a piece of paper. You put together two names. V'hu sheyeda ne'emana, it means that a person should know truthfully, should know, yeda ne'emana means to really know, to Shem Elikim, Einoi Master Be'emes Al Shem Havaya. That Elikim and everything that's represented when we say the name Elikim, which represents, as we explained, the entire concept, the entire reality of tzimtzum, of concealment, of restrictions, of blockages. It's all represented when we say the word Elikim. Einoi Master Be'emes Al Shem Havaya. Even though the purpose of Elikim is to serve as a concealment, but Einoi Master Be'emes Al Shem Havaya. In the ultimate truth, it doesn't conceal and eclipse Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei, and everything that represents. The Shem Elikim hu atzmus Ein Sof k'bar Shem Havaya. Shem Elikim is atzmus Ein Sof. It's the essence of Ein Sof, just like Shem Havaya. Just like we said, Shem Havaya is atzmus Ein Sof. It's not Ein Sof, the Eir of the Ein Sof, the way it was obscured, restricted, channeled, enclosed, and manifested in veils and partitions and metaphors and many, many layers of concealment that bring down the energy and allow it to assume a more brute incarnation and a more brute and coarse manifestation. That's not Shem Havaya. Shem Havaya, we said, is the Ein Sof. It's undefined, it's indivisible, it's infinite. Elikim are the vessels, are the containers that contain and limit and obscure and channel in the great mashal that we spoke about, the teacher and the student. But the truth is, after everything we explained, that the whole avoid of a person is to reveal the yichud of Havaya v'Elikim. What's the yichud of Havaya Elikim? That Havaya hu Elikim. That Havaya and Elikim are really one. Well, since they're really one, they're not one. That's the chiddush, that Elikim is not master really on Shem Havaya, because Elikim is the same atzmus Ein Sof like Shem Havaya. Ve'etzem einoi master al atzm. And the core, the etzem, doesn't eclipse the core. So Elikim can't really be master on Shem Havaya, like the marshal he gave from the halacha in Shulchan Aruch, about Hilchas Kisya Rosh, that when you cover your head with your hand, it's not called a covering in halacha, because ein etzem, master al etzem, because the hand and the skull, the hand and the head are really one guf, so therefore, when I go like this on my head, it's not called a covering, because it's one etzem, it's one essential organism, the guf. Ein etzem, master al etzem. So therefore, Elikim is the same etzem like Havaya. Just like we spoke in the Mosh, that for the teacher, all the metaphors don't eclipse the idea. Why? Because the metaphors all come from him and he sees within them the manifestation of the idea. He doesn't see them as something separate. It's just for the student initially. There is a concealment because he wants to give. He doesn't want to hold back. He wants to give, but he has to give in a way that's limited to the capacity of the student. But because for him it's not a real concealment, so ultimately for the student it's also not a real concealment. Because within those short, brief, concise ideas and metaphors you have compressed and contained the whole depth. So for the teacher it's lechatchila not a concealment. And for the student it's only initially a concealment. But it's only the way to actually access the full intense revelation. This is all the nimshul. This was all a mashal for the nimshul of Yichud Havaya v'Elikim. that etzem einay master al etzem. V'chol hayisavus hi u'mishem havaya. All of existence comes as essentially an expression of havaya, the havaya u'ma'ava kol hanivrayim. Havaya, which essentially is the name Yudke Vovke, which is connected to the word Haya, Hayvayeh, is, isness, Haya, isness, existence, the Hishavos, the being of all the Nivrayim emerges. It's an expression, it's a manifestation of Havaya. V'chol halavushim v'haleim is the Shem Elokim. And then you have all the garments and all of the concealments that are represented by what we call Shem Elokim. So initially you may think that Havaya and Elokim are two names. That's why they're called two names. You would think it's separate things. Chas v'shalom. On this we say that no. That kol halavushim v'haleim is the Shem Elokim einam ma'alimim u'mastirim be'emes. They do not conceal and they do not block with truth. Truthfully they don't conceal. Meaning, it appears as a concealment in order to achieve its functionality. But in the true MS, it's not a concealment. Kim adirabba. Not only that, it's the contrary. The function of Elokim is to transport, to bring the energy into a lower realm, as we explained at length, like the teacher who wants to give. He doesn't want to hold back. But in order to give, you have to hold back, because if you don't hold back, you'll flood the student's brains. So really you want to give, you don't want to hold back. So here too, in order to bring the air to a lower place, it has to go through Elokim. So really the function of Elokim is not a contradiction to Havaya. It's all Havaya. It's all to create Gili L'Makom Namach Yosef. V'hainu shebgam b'nivroyim bali gvul yumshich b'em oir Havaya l'avoysim alach Yosef. That even in finite creatures that are defined by finiteness and by identity and by their own limited parameters, they should be able to experience the Eir Havaya, the divine energy, lahavoisam, to bring them into existence, lahachayusam, and to give them life, to give them vitality, to vivify them, to give them vibrance. Ubechol makom shehu. And wherever he is, wherever the nivra is, wherever the finite existence is, nimshach loy shefa v'chiyus m'shem havaya. There is communicated to him a shefa flow of light and of vitality of life from Shem Havaya. And therefore, all of Elokim essentially is not a helam. It's a gilui, it's a way of processing, of transporting, of allowing the infinite energy to be able to vivify. Vivify means to give chiyus, to give kiyum, to give hisavos, both existence and life, both existence and continuous existence, and also life. Life is design, content, functionality, purpose, all from Havaya in order to be able to be absorbed in every single nivra. So in that sense, Elokim is not at all different. Blocking Havaya, it's actually revealing Shem Havaya according to the capacity of the Nivra. That's step one. And then there's step two, the deeper step that we have explored, that ultimately it even allows the Nivra to come back, so to speak, to gain, to discover the Bligvul, the Shem Havaya, the way it is in its pristine essence, just like the student within the words that have been given to him by a student, even though they're characterized by brevity, conciseness, concealment and limitation, conceal and contain within themselves the full depth so that he could unravel in a process of Or Chayzer, the original light, the original energy, the original infinity. Ulezois thus tzarich liyos davok meyuchad v'ha'or v'chiyus aleki hanishbaloi loyal halavushim v'haleimus mitzad atzma. This, the person always has to remain davok, always has to be focused, always has to remain connected to the light, to the energy, and not get stuck and trapped in the garments and the concealments. Be able to relate and be able to perceive the divine light that is being communicated through the garments and through the concealments. As we will still explain more of this further. That's the summation of the whole beer till now. This was still the shtickle about Nisyanis, and then it says V'kasher Inyan, And when this inyan, which inyan? Hainu hat dveikus v'hayichud. When the dveikus, the closeness, the intimacy, and the oneness between Halikim and Havaya, Baloi al Yidei Nisayon, comes. This is really the whole avodah of all of life. From the person, the moment the person comes into the world, throughout their journey of life, the whole avodah sa'adam is to be megala, to reveal that Havaya hu Elikim. Ata reisel adas ki Hashem hu Elikim einan wad. Oviyadaita, like we say in Aleinu every day, 3 times a day. Viyadaita hayoim v'ashevoisa elev avecha ki Hashem hu Elikim. That's not a pasha to think. Moshe has to say v'yadaita v'ashevoisa elev avecha, and not just bashamayim, even aretz mitachas ki Hashem hu Elikim. That's why the end of Yom Kippur, when a new year begins, a new seder of avodah begins, the Jews finish off Ne'ilah with 7 times Hashem hu Elikim. That's essentially all of avodah sa'adam. To be megala, the yichud of Havaya and Elikim. It expresses itself in every facet of life. It expresses itself in business, expresses itself in health, expresses itself how you treat your body, how you treat your soul. It's the essence of Yiddishkeit. It's the essence of science. It's the essence of physics. It's the essence of relationships. It's the essence of how you educate, how you inspire. It's how a person lives in the world. Yichud Havaya V'Elikim. But then there is sometimes a nisayon. He says, when this opportunity, with this theme, which theme? The dveikus and the yichud, with the oir within the levushim. In other words, the connecting of Elikim and Havaya Baloi Adei Nisayon emerges through a nisayon, as we said, through a unique test, which increases the challenge, which increases the concealment, which increases the garments, which creates apparently a larger husk, because every nisayon is a deeper and denser levush that it distracts. It naturally distracts and alienates a person from Torah and Avodah. This is an opportunity to reach an even deeper Gilui Oir Elyon, even a much deeper light. Hainu Gilui Oir in Sof Shalamayla Me'ateva, the manifestation of the Oir itself, which is beyond Elikim B'Gematria Teva, the Oir itself of Havaya, beyond Levushim, by facing down the Nisayon. So this paragraph essentially summarized all of the shiurim, all of the explanations, everything that we learned till now in this Maamar.
Yeah, but a person is not always Zayka. Avram said, when am I going to get with Chaim? Absolutely doesn't ever have this sign like Avram or what other Yidden.
You said it this morning already, no?
How do we the ultimate?
Every person asks Al Tavienu L'Dei Nisayon. A person is not supposed to ask for Nisayon. Chas v'shalom. We say every day Al Tavienu L'Dei Nisayon. The pshat is life is fraught with Nisyonos. A neshama in this world is fraught with Nisyonos. Is it a mitzvah to go into a Nisayon? No. But the Rabbi Shalom brings Nisyonos. You want to go around the room and ask people? You're looking at me as if something to you. There's different levels. Fine. Baruch Hashem that today we live in a generation that the nisyonos that our Zaydas and Babas went through, we don't have to go through those nisyonos. There's different types.
How do we get to them anyway?
Nishkedaiget.
Get what you can have.
Every doid has its shlichus. Every generation has its shlichus. Exactly. There's a lashon of the Chavis Yair that we are like midgets standing on the shoulders of giants. Jewish history is not detached. It's not that this is a new generation after the Holocaust. We were hatched from an egg. Jewish history is one continuum. We stand on their shoulders. Every Jew who ever lived, we stand on his shoulders or on her shoulders. The Treden was dein Baba hat geklippet bei Licht in der Reich. Was meinst du? You think it went to waste?
There was a sense that Nisyonos are not having what.
Fine. Every doid has its shlichus, its nisyonos. It's not a competition game. This was written in Tov Reish Nun Zayin. There were great nesyonos there. Great nesyonos. In Moscow, the Rebbe Rashab said it in Moscow. It's like 1897, under the bitter, miserable Tsarist regime, between the Gzeres Ayumis, that we don't even have a hasaga. And this was 50 years before the Second World War. This is 20 years before the First World War, which was in itself a mind-boggling catastrophe. If not for the Second World War, the First World War would have been one of the greatest Tisha B'Avs of human history. The Holocaust was so monumental and awesome that it eclipsed everything else. You know, Tach and Tat, like Tach v'Tat, what happened? The Gzeres Ayumas, I mean. And forget Tach v'Tat, a regular day in Russia and Eastern Europe was people don't realize. It's a whole new generation. And it's a tremendous opportunity. But prosperity and freedom has its challenges also. Different types, different categories. And it's not about comparison. In many ways, it's so much easier out of here. Most people in this generation, at least in our countries, don't know what it means to die from starvation. The poorest people don't know what it means to go 3-4 days constantly without food. Nobody knows what that means.
In the world today, there's no such thing as that.
Jews have not been through enough. What, you don't think Jews have been through enough?
Live a whole life that you can't.
Ilmali Nagdua, Chananya Mishal Vazarya, Gemara in Pesachim, Ilmali Nagdua. Right?
It's easier to die in Kiddush Hashem than to live in Kiddush Hashem.
I don't know. I usually don't compare. I hear, yeah. I don't know. We had a teacher who called us Amerikaner Chokoladniks. American kids who grew up on chocolate. You have to have a certain humility, you know what I mean?
Bittersweet chocolates.
Sweet chocolate, sweet sugar, milchig, schmerling, Swiss chocolate. Even on Pesach in some homes. You could die from chocolate too, yeah. The fact is, right, the fascinating thing is, in the recent years, more people have died from obesity than from starvation. That's unheard of in human history. Unheard of. Most people didn't make it after 45, 40, 50. And the reason is one of three things. War, conflict, violence, bloodshed, hunger, and disease. Infections, germs, bacteria, the Black Plague, other plagues, what are wiped out. Wiped out millions and millions and millions of people. People, to live to 70 was a chidush otzom. Starvation, plagues, diseases, illnesses, and war, violence, bloodshed. Now, not to underestimate the violence that exists and people who die from terrorism, Rahman al-Islam, and not to underestimate third world countries where poverty and disease and illness and famine are a reality. And it's a horrible, horrible tragedy. And humanity has to get together because this remains our greatest opportunity and our greatest privilege to confront these things. But we also can't underestimate the fact that you don't understand that for thousands of years, when people woke up in the morning, the first three thoughts were hunger, infectious diseases, and violence. And today, at least in a large part of the world, people wake up and they don't think about these three things. Not that nobody thinks about these three things. Unfortunately, many people do, especially people who are struck with personal great challenges and illness and so forth. Not to chas v'shalom underestimate any of this tremendous pain that so many people go through, including in this room. And never mind other forms of pain, including other forms of pain that we often address. But one also has to be able to understand the tremendous evolution of history to such a space. So each generation has its own types of concealments of its nesyonos. Today, for example, one of the hardest things for people is happiness, serenity, to be able to live a joyous, calm, wholesome, inspired life. Marriages, relationships with children. These look like small things. 50 years ago, nobody had even, 100 years, nobody had time to think about this. You ask somebody, what do you feel about your mother? What I feel about my mother? If you had a mother, you were happy. You had no father also? Wow. We have the luxury to feel our emotions, to tap into emotions. We have the luxury to go to therapy. Who had the luxury to do this? Yeah, time. Even time. The concept of time didn't exist. It was survival. Every moment was survival. Not always, not by everybody, but by a huge, huge percentage of the population. But there's different types of nisyonos. There's physical nisyonos, there's spiritual nisyonos, interpersonal nisyonos. And the truth is, when somebody's going through a very difficult time, it's a little neshama to say, you say they had it harder. It's true, you say they may have had it harder, but how does it help a person in the crisis? Okay, now here, Rabbi Chanan, did I answer your question? Not really. Huh? Okay. But we remember, we stand on the shoulders of our parents and grandparents. When you look at Jewish history, you never look at it as a detached reality. All the generations of Jews exist here in this room. We continue the conversation. Rabbi Yoshe Soloveitchik had amal gegeben a shir. Yeah? So he was describing that he'd given a shir. He says, Plutzlung, Abaya geht rein in Zimmer. Rava enters into the room. Suddenly the Rambam appears, 1,000 years later, but the Rambam appears. And then the Ravid comes to argue with him. And then the Beis Yosef, the Kesef Mishnah, comes to defend him. And everybody, it's a continuous conversation.
I just remember Bimram saying, whenever he went out, all the time, that's a Reiche Medina. If he lived in Poland, where he said, then he used to...
Reb Shmuel Birnbaum,
He says,
the Mir Rosh Yeshiva.
Yeah, he used to tell me the dach of Europe was unbelievable.
Yeah,
And you would see the American and say, Mohammed out as a Reiche Medina. And I'm talking about his house looked like it was falling apart, and he thought it was a Reiche Medina. Inside the
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
He thought it was a Reiche Medina. The chair and four tables.
Yeah.
Table and four chairs.
I once took my son's class in yeshiva to little kids a few hours away here. They have a neighborhood that they still can maintain from the early 1800s. Just to show it to them. So we went around, so you go, you see how they lived. They left it intact. Quite fascinating. So we went into a house. So the house basically is one room. The whole house is one room and an attic. An attic, it gives perspective of what because chametz looked like. We're learning Pesachim now. How people live. And there was one bed. And the bed was designated for 10 people. 10 people slept in the bed. They didn't sleep in the length of the bed. They slept in the width of the bed. And the fact that they were so tight together was very important for the winter. For the cold winter, the body heat of being smashed and squeezed, crushed together like sardines was actually very, very helpful in order to maintain the heat. So 10 people went into the bed literally every single night. And this you could see. You could literally see. You show them and they when they're complaining back home about the extra lollipop, they didn't get it. It gives perspective. It's always good to have perspective. On the other hand, as you used to say, there's the Nisayan of Siberia and there's the Nisayan of Suburbia. And the fact remains, and this is maybe a sad fact, that Jews, there's nisyonos of Siberia, meaning the nisyonos of poverty and persecution that came because of them being Jews, they actually withstood, not always, but amazingly. We're here. After all the persecution, we're here. The challenge of freedom, which allows for assimilation and integration, is often harder for many Jews to withstand. Right? Moshe says in the Teichecha, it would prove that for Jews, when they have simcha v'tuv leivav and roiv koil, it would often prove harder to maintain their identity, because tragically, persecution forces people to crystallize their identity and their priorities in ways that are unique. Freedom and prosperity allows people to surrender to sometimes the greatest enemy, which is lethal and silent, and that's called complacency. Complacency. You just submit to complacency, which creates its own form of paralysis and stagnation. So, yesh v'yesh. Yesh v'yesh.
Wasn't it the machlekes about Napoleon?
Yeah, the famous machlekes about Napoleon was this machlekes. Many of the Gdolei Yisrael felt that Napoleon was the greatest thing that ever happened to the Jewish people in Galus. For good reason. The Tsar was a Rasha Merusha. The persecutions were horrible. Napoleon was all about egalitarianism, fraternity, democracy, etc. The Balatanya was a Yochid B'Doiret to be opposed Napoleon. It was a Chiddush Gadol. It was hard to understand why he opposed Napoleon so much. He opposed him vehemently. Okay, so now, let's take this to the next step and try to see more of some of the messages that are being conveyed here. I think one way of conveying at least one of the details that we could learn from this has to do with there's 2 points that I want to convey here. They seem paradoxical, but as we have learned, they're really the same thing. Havaya v'elekim kol echad. One has to do with the general approach to nisyonis. And what I mean here by nisyonis is, just to give it a simple term, is painful challenges that people face. And again, I'm not in the business of comparing. When somebody has a toothache, yeah? You ever had a real toothache for like 2 days? You could tell somebody whatever you want, but they can't function. When you're nauseous, maybe in the global sense, maybe global warming couldn't care less if you're nauseous or not. But this person is vomiting, you're sick in bed, it may not be a crisis. Baruch Hashem, you went to the doctor. The doctor said, just go to sleep and drink, and sleep. But for this person, this is a difficult moment. When we talk about sometimes bigger things in life, the comparison business doesn't really help. Every person has to figure out their own life, and every person has the koiches to figure out their own life. But all the types of challenges that people face, and this can of course be very many, whether it's a financial crisis, a financial difficulty, very serious financial difficulty, or even not a serious one, but it's a financial crisis. Somebody doesn't know how they're making a wedding, or doesn't know how they're paying tuition, right? Or doesn't know how they're buying food for Shabbos, so they can't buy new shoes for a child. That's a difficulty. It's a nisayon. And some people live with this nisayon for many years. Other people don't understand it. I told somebody, I said, you never had struggled a single month to pay your mortgage. Baruch Hashem, your father paid for it, and his father paid for it. You don't even understand what it means. A person gets a bill, and they don't know how to deal with it. You don't understand what it means. Thank God you don't understand what it means. This is on this side. You have issues that are connected to health. You have issues that are connected to mental health. And this is very serious stuff, mental health, because nobody sees it. It's all inside. And then you have issues dealing with emotional pain. People who were traumatized, people who went through abuse. And again, it may not seem dramatic to other people, but their inner life may be shattered, as some of you know so well. Your inner life, every day to wake up, is a fight. And every day to wake up and smile and get out of bed and believe in yourself is another fight. It's a war. For somebody else, they don't even notice this. And they don't notice it on the person, what it means for this person to come to Shul. But this is a serious nisayon. Somebody's marriage is falling apart. And they, for whatever reason, my fault, her fault, both fault, neither fault. And then there's issues with children, and then there's issues with loss, death and grief in a family, Rahman al-Islam. V'chuli. I'm not here. The Gemara says, Atu kiroich lelezel v'lachshav. I'm not going to go here. Enumerate every conceivable challenge. But there's different types of pekalach. And you disagree with me? Halavai.
It's amazing what you're saying. It's beautiful what you're saying.
I don't know how amazing it is, but okay.
It's beautiful what you're saying. It seems like there's challenges that come upon us that are from outside, like a certain health challenge.
Yeah.
There's challenges that we have inside, like
Also. Yes.
So, like a challenge to live up to that.
Yeah.
To really do that 100%.
Yeah, that's all included. And then there's spiritual challenges. There's people who deal with horrible addictions. some of us sitting in this room know very well, or listening, or people b'chlal. And there's people who deal with horrible temptations every day. Is this other people don't know about them? Some people sitting in their office, going on a computer, or meeting people presents tremendous challenges. It depends on your mind and your disposition and your chemical makeup and your background. It's not pashut. We read about Yosef and Esha, the wife of Potiphar, yeah? There's people who have to deal with this. They deal with this. Their bodies are Baruch Hashem alive and well, and they deal with these types of serious challenges. Again, you look at somebody, you don't know what they go through. When you sit here in this room and you look at people, I'm always intrigued by the fact that nobody ever knows what is happening in anybody else's mind and heart, you know? What everybody looks normal, or most of us at least. I don't want to say everybody. I don't mean to discriminate and insult everybody. But at least most of us try to appear pretty normal, okay? But if you could just dig away a little bit, if you could just see, the levels of insanity. Again, I don't mean to insult anybody, but it's just fascinating, right? The Gemara says in Pesachim, "Ein adam yodea ma b'libo shel chaveiro." Nobody knows what's in anybody's head. What if we would know? What if I could look around and you could look around? You know what everybody is, what's happening inside. It would be a difficult world to inhabit. Though that means you would also know what your wife is thinking constantly. The other way around, it actually is. She knows usually what you're thinking, but that's why she's your wife. You would know what that is what they're thinking about you. B'chlal, opening yourself up to everybody's thoughts. So it's a very private world. It's a very intimate world.
Opening up creates a vulnerability, and also opening up also allows for the possibility of more growth.
Of course.
The Gemara says that a face is the Rishus Rabim, so if a person is an intuitive,
yeah, of course, yeah. In the world of Musa, they always quoted Bisol Salanta, who once saw a person who looked very, very depressed, and he said, this is a classic Musar Dikavart. He said, your face is a Rishus Rabim. It was Shabbos. Your depression is a Rishus HaYachid. You're not allowed to carry from Rishus HaYachid into Rishus HaRabim. The Besal Salante. Shabbos. Your face is a private domain. It's a public domain. Your depression is a private domain. You're not allowed to transport from a private domain into a public domain.
The one who started about yoga also said that about how he could smile in the face of all difficulty, right?
Yeah, the Chavis Halavavas has a beautiful expression that a Chachim da'agosoi beliboy v'tzahalosoi b'fanav. Sometimes there's anxiety inside, but he doesn't necessarily share it with the world. But that could be understood in two different ways. One as repression, which I don't think the Chavis Halavavas meant. And one is a different approach, not repression, but almost choosing what I want to do at this moment, choosing a value, not as a result of repression. Now, when we talk about all of these types of nisyanas, there's an expression, a very famous expression that everybody has heard, called Kabbalas Yisurim Ba'ava. What does Kabbalas Yisurim Ba'ava mean? It's based on a Mishnah and a Gemara in the end of Maseches Brachas. Kabbalas Yisurim Ba'ava literally means accepting Yisurim, which is Chayav Adam, accepting Yisurim, pain, Ba'ava with love. Very often, people make a mistake. I think people make a mistake in this area. Very often, the way people understand it, and this is not Chalila judgment, this is just trying to explain and identify a characteristic that we see. Very often, something happens in a person's life. Child gets sick. Chalila v'chas, v'ken yidin gedach. It's a serious nisayon. I don't mean they get a cold or an earache. That also could cause a couple of headaches, but not to compare to a more serious headache. So they may come to somebody, a teacher, a mentor, a rabbi, a rav, or themselves, or read a sefer, and the person may say, this happened, it's really good. accept it ba'ava. Accept it with love, just like if you won the lottery, or even if you didn't win the lottery, just like a regular thing that comes your way. That's not a negative thing. It's by divine providence. The Rabbi Shalom runs the world. He orchestrates the world. It must be good. And when a person could really believe this and have a munah, and they go to shiurim, and there's telephone numbers and telephone lines and websites and books and svarim and seminars, etc., if you could really believe this and cultivate this approach, so then what often should happen is you should be a happy person, and your frustration is buried, and your anxiety is gone, and your worry is obliterated, and any negative attitude is gone. You're back to a simchas Chaim, to a joy of life, because Kabbalas Yisurim Ba'ava means you accept the Yisurim with love, meaning you look at it, Chayav Adam Levarech Al Harag Shemarech Al HaToiva. You thank Hashem for bad like you thank for good, so now I should feel good. I've met quite many people who have shared this and shared the guilt over the fact that this never worked for them. They feel broken. They often surrender to tears. They often feel angry, frustrated. They want to punch walls and a few people. They want to punch tires. They sometimes feel like they're completely disintegrate. They look at the world and they see an abyss. They see a never-ending tahaib. So the person says to himself, obviously I'm not a real Yid. Obviously I'm not a real Jew. Obviously I don't have real Amunah. Obviously there's something missing in me. And the person gets broken not only from the challenge, but from how they're dealing with the challenge. And sometimes, listen to me, this challenges them more than the challenge. The challenge, they know what to do. There's people to go to this internal guilt of why do I feel this way? Sometimes breaks people, or at least disorients people in very, very profound ways. And when the person is feeling all this pain, and this person is looking at their life and saying, how did this happen? How did this happen to me? How was my life shattered? A fellow came, called me up, he's emergency, he has to see me. So he comes in, a fine person. He made some mistakes, and he destroyed his whole life with those mistakes. Lost his family, Maamar destroyed his life. An intelligent person, he suffered, he himself was abused, was not dealt with. He went into addiction, and he made some horrible, horrible mistakes. And he never told it to anybody. He opened up the first time to me in my dining room after 25 years. Well, he was in his early 30s, so he opened up after 30 some years, but a story that happened 25 years ago. And he just broke down weeping. He says, how did this happen to me? How did this happen to me? Now, somebody comes and says, you have to be makabel yisurim ba'ava. Everything is b'hashgacha, everything is b'emunah, Hashem is good, chayv adam levarech al harad, there's many mamar chazal, you don't ask questions, etc., etc. Moshe Rabbeinu asked, and Hashem said, chaval al da'avdim v'lo mishtagchin, learn from the others, lo hiru acharim midoisai. We don't think about these things. You have to be able to say that it's good, and you have to be able to accept it. And the person says, I'm so in pain, what does it mean? It means that my Judaism, my relationship with God is really, really flawed. It means not only am I going through a terrible challenge, but I'm also such a horrible person of how I'm responding. And maybe that's why I'm punished with this challenge, because I'm such a horrible Jew. Maybe that itself, which makes him even more guilty, because he's guilty now for the challenge also, which makes him even more broken, that he's broken. And the internal turmoil that people go through, not only is they dealing with a serious challenge, they're now dealing with a double challenge, and sometimes a triple one and a quadrupled one.
First you have to be a person, then you can deal with it, no?
But this is often, I can't say always, but this is often a mistake. And I'll tell you why it's a mistake. There was a Yid I know from Eretz Yisrael, well, he's in Toronto, Reb Moshe Shapiro Zechrayna Levracha, was from the big Bali Machshav in the literature world. He passed away some 2 years ago or so. I think this time, Asar B'Tevis time. So there was a Jew who came to him. He was sitting, there was a shmuz, so he was shmuzing, giving a shir. And somebody spoke about an experience that he's going through, and the turmoil, the anxiety that he has from it, the difficulty. And he told him a simple thing, but it's not so simple, it's profound. He said, so right now, the Ribbono Shel Olam wants you to feel this type of emotion of pain. So right now, Hashem wants you to feel this type of emotion of pain. What we forget is that the pain that comes with a challenge also comes from God. So a person is trying to run away from their pain as though it doesn't exist, because I'm a Kabul Yisurim Ba'ava, so there's no pain. There were Jews in history who saw no pain. To put it in the lashon of the Maamar, pre-Elokim, pre-Tzimtzum. They didn't see any pain. They just saw God everywhere. The example was Reb Zusha of Anipoli. Reb Zusha of Anipoli was a student of the Maggid. When the Baal Tanya wrote the Tanya, he wanted 2 askamas. So one of them he took from Reb Zusha. His yahrzeit was just now Beis Shvat, the Rebbe Reb Zusha. He was a Kaddish Elyon. He had nothing. His poverty was beyond even the levels of poverty in Eastern Europe. He lived in Ukraine, Anipoli. He's buried in Anipoli, near the Maggid, in the Ukraine. So the Bzusha once was visited by a fellow. What happened? This fellow came to the Maggid of Mizrich and he says he needs an Eitzah for Kabbalah Yisurim Ba'ava. He needs advice how to maintain serenity with all the challenges of life. So he says, go to the Bzusha. Go to the Bzusha. So he goes to the Bzusha. He stays there for a few days. The Bzusha says, how can I help you? So he tells him why he's there. He says, you must have heard the wrong name. I don't think the Maggid sent you to me. So he says, no, he said Bzusha of Anipoli. He says, you probably didn't hear what he said. Go back and ask him. He says, how are you so sure it's not you? He says, you got the wrong guy. I never had a bad day in my life. I'm not the expert to tell you how to deal with challenges. I never had a bad day in my life. Yeah, they say that the Belzerov, Rabbi Aaron, that's what they say. You know, he went through Shiva Meduri Gehenna. He lost every member of his family. There was not a member of his family left besides a brother who ultimately had a son who was the present Belzer Rebbe Shlita. But the Rabbi Aaron Belzi was a Kaddish Elyon. And they say that after he went through, somebody came to him, one of his chassidim. He came to Eretz Yisrael and he was devastated beyond. 5 children murdered and all the Iniklach, etc. A whole family and a whole chassidus, a whole empire, almost completely destroyed. And somebody offered empathy and condolences, for all the hardship, that he went through. And he says, he looks at him, he says, Ich habe nicht gehabt keinen schlechten Tag in mein Leben. Now, was he living in Mars? Where did he live? He went through the Holocaust. A Jew, the pshat is, there are certain Jews for whom life means a relationship with God. That is life. And that relationship never ceased. Sometimes the relationship is experienced in this way, and sometimes it's experienced in this way. That is life. Ki toiv chasdecha mechayim, David HaMelech says. Having a relationship with you, that is life. So I have always a great life. There is such a b'china. I told you the story many times with the bucket. Also with Reb Zusha, the same idea. You remember the story? Huh?
Holes in the bucket.
No, the toilet. Yeah, they started to dance. He said, not davening is also a relationship. Well, the famous story, not davening is also a relationship. Also the same, the Rebbe Reb Zusha. Sometimes God wants you to daven, sometimes He wants you not to daven. So ich daven. Who decides what davening is? Who decides what's the definition of life? This is called a good life, this is called a bad life. Why is it called a bad life? Some people call it a bad life. God doesn't call it a bad life. You're with God. But how many people do you know like this? Hishtavus. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. The Baal Shem Tov said Shivisi comes from the word Hishtavus. Hashem lenegdi samid. Everything is b'shava. The Rambam says it in Pirush HaMishnayos. Everything is b'shava. The Rambam even tells you a story, a Jew in a ship and somebody urinated on him. And for him it was alt saints like anything else. The Rambam in Parshas Mishnayos. Now here's the issue. We learn this, and these are dvarim amitim. This is Teres Emes. But here is where a person has to be able to learn real emes and not repress the truth that God gave him because he wants a relationship with truth. Because when you're dealing with a person who is suffering, you could say, well, you decided that life means this and this, and now you're calling it suffering and pain. Why is it pain? The relationship is the same. There is a Jew who experiences that. There's a Jew who does not experience it, at least not now. Will he experience it one day? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe not. For him to say, what does it mean to have a relationship with Hashem? I don't feel pain. I'm all smiles. Everything is perfect. Impeccable, flawless. And if I'm feeling it, it means I'm a bad Jew. That's not true. That's a sheker. That's not true. The same God who you want to find in the pain, in the challenge, the same God you say, Hashgacha Pratis, Hashem wanted this to happen for whatever reason, the same God is also in the emotion that comes from what happened. That's also divine. By escaping from my pain and denying it, I'm escaping from a truth. I'm escaping from something that has within it the divine too. The fact that I'm feeling this way, whatever I'm feeling, I can't judge it. Whatever I'm feeling, I have to be able to respect. I have to be able to look at it. I have to be able to embrace it. I have to be able to give it space. Validate it. I have to be able to validate it. The religious perspective is not about invalidating emotions because they're primitive and stupid and heretical and idiotic and only come because you're a lowlife and you surrender. If you would read more Chovos HaLevavos and you would go to more shiurim and you would read more books on B'tachon and you would be like Shal Mordechai Rabashkin, Aleph Beis Gimel, Emunah B'tachon Gula. If I could just be like him, yeah. When he was sitting with me like Boimer, I said, "You want to tell us about prison?" So he says, when I was sitting in a place that some people call prison, I said, why don't you say when I was in prison? He said, I wasn't in prison. I was in a place that some people call prison. He said, I wasn't in prison. Some people call it prison. He said, I was with the Rabbi Shalom. Why is that prison? Being with God is a prison? It's the best place in the world. It happens to be that Tzir Chitzayni by some people was prison. You could learn from it. You could learn a lot from it. But a person is having now an emotion. Don't dismiss that emotion and you'll say, I only find God in moments of absolute serenity. Why do you only find God in moments of absolute serenity? Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchas. Moshe broke the luchas. What does the Gemara say in Baba Basra Daf Yudalit? Luchais v'shivrei luchas monachim bara. In the Ark, in the Holy of Holies, you had the luchas and you had the broken luchas. Why? The same kedusha that was created in Kodesh HaKadoshim from the luchas were created by the shivrei luchas. Without the shivrei luchas, there's something missing in Kodesh HaKadoshim. Right now, the kedusha is in the broken pieces of the luchas. There is kedusha in the whole luchas. But when the Jews went through the crisis of the golden calf, Moshe had to show them that you could find God also in shivrei luchas. And what does Hashem say? Thank you for breaking the luchas. You don't have to run away from it. You don't have to amputate a part of yourself in your relationship with yourself. You don't have to dismiss any part and reject it and invalidate it and therefore repress it and crush it and force it not to be there. Because when you force something not to be there and it's really there, you know what happens. It remains there and it comes back to haunt you in much more powerful ways.
Can we extend this to temptation to the problems that we have also? We're just in the same concept.
Temptation too. Worst, One of the worst things when it comes to temptation is making believe I don't have temptations. Ich bin a shaykh to them. I'm a good Jew. You know how many people make this mistake? I'm a good Jew. I don't have temptations. The Kotzker Rebbe said, "Am a brechta taive, wird von ein taive zwei." When you break a taive, one became two. This Kotzker Rebbe didn't know that in hundreds of svarim we speak about shviras hatayvas. The Kotzker Rebbe didn't know that. I know it, and he didn't know it. There's breaking and there's breaking. You have to break with love. I told you once a Maisa with the Tzemach Tzedek about the Alter Rebbe with the Brech, and you know the Maisa? Moire de Maisa. Somebody gave the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya, a gift. A silver. He also had a lot of poverty. He is very poor. His shver threw him out of the house and wanted his wife's divorce. He married a very rich girl, Rabbi Yehuda Leib Segel from Minsk. But then when the shver found out he goes to the Magid and he belongs to the Kat of Chassidim, that was it. He wanted his wife to divorce him. She didn't. But he suffered terribly financially. So, this is a reminder of the other dimension. It's the luchas, the shivri luchas.
They're singing
Okay, that's what we're talking about. Yeah. So somebody bought the Balatanya a silver, real silver pushkala, a snuff box, shmek tabak, to smell tobacco. So he looked at it and he said, "There's one aver, there's one limb in the body that the Rebbeinu Shalom did not make a baltaiva. It doesn't experience a lot of temptation, and that's the nose. Yeah, you never heard somebody come to Shul and say, 'Last night did I sin with my nose?' Yeah. With your mouth, with your ears, with your eyes, with other parts of the body that I won't elaborate on, a person could sin nicely, but with the nose, was gehst du shinton? Was gehst schmeck? You'll smell domino pizza on Pesach. I mean, was gehst du schmeck? Hagam, that once I said this over and somebody said, Rabbi, why? Well, you don't know what you're talking about. But fine. Okay. So he said, so the ein ever was nicht kein Baltaive, und das, there's a whole Bnei Yisachar, why we smell psalm at Tzor Shabbos, because in the Eitz Hadas, Chava experienced the Eitz Hadas with 4 senses. She saw the fruit, right? She saw the fruit. It says it was Nechmad Lamara. She saw it. She listened to the snake. She touched it, vatikach, and vatoichal. She tasted it. Doesn't say she smelled it. So the Bnei Yisachar writes that the sense of smell remained pure, like pre-Eitz Hadas. It's not so corrupted, and that's why Mitzvah Shabbos, when you're going from the holiness into the mundaneness, we do it through smell. Very many psalmim. That's what Bnei Yisachar writes. A very beautiful art. So the nose is not so. It doesn't lend itself to so much politics and corruption. Probably if you try, you could figure stuff out with the various perfumes, but you have to try harder. At least in Lyozhne and Belarus, it was not. It's before, before Estee Lauder's days. So he said there's one Eva that's not a Baltaiva. Man geht es anstoppen euch mit Taiva. So the person telling over the story to the Tzemach Tzedek, to the grandson, said, so your Zayda took the cover, which was made of silver, he broke it off the box, and he used it for his tefillin, Shorosh, to be able to make sure it's in the right place, Beineinach. So the Tzemach Tzedek interrupted this person. And he says, the Zayda is nicht gewinnt shaykh zu brechen. Nicht sich, und nicht jenem, und afüllen nicht adoimem. My Zayda wasn't capable of breaking. Not himself, not others, and not even a doimim, not even a box, an inanimate box. Elamai, so gewinnt a chut ha-mekasher. Et ha-reis genommen, the chut ha-mekasher is a snifrit gevar. There was a hinge. The hinge connected the lid to the box. He took out the hinge. He took out the pin. So it's got separated, use it for tefillin. That's the mice. What did the Tzemach Tzedek want? The poor man is telling a story. He wanted to bring out a point. What are you now going to... He said he broke off the box. But there's a very profound idea. The profound idea is, what's tefillin? This is how the Rebbe explained the story. What's tefillin? Tefillin is shibud halev hamayach. When you put on tefillin, it says in Shulchan Aruch, you have to have kavanah to dedicate your mind and heart, to subjugate, shibud alev, the lev and the mayach. You would think, how you meshabed the lev and the mayach? Through breaking. You have to break yourself. You have to break. So the tefillin shorosh comes through shviz. Rabbi Tzaddik said, no. The zayd is nicht gewen shayach zu brechen. It's not about breaking. Not himself, because people who break themselves break other people. People who delegitimize their own emotions will delegitimize everybody else's emotions. If you don't know how to deal with your own anxiety and emotions, you don't let anybody have them, because theirs scare you. They trigger you in very, very scary ways. If I never made peace with my variety of emotions, if you, my spouse or my child or my friend or my colleague or somebody else starts sharing volatile emotions, I'm like, oh my God, we don't go there. Gehenim pasuach mitachti. For me, this is Gehenim. I have to run away and either argue with you and prove to you that you really don't have these emotions. And because I learned Gemara my whole life, plus Toysfus and Maram Shif and Rashba and Ran and Reb Chaim and Bercher Shmuel and Reb Akiva Eiger too, so I could prove to my wife that she thinks she has the emotion, but really she doesn't. Good luck. Good luck. And that's what people do for 10, 20 years in their marriage until they come to the right person. Because you never made space for your own. What is this in Avodas Hashem? That's what the Kotzker Rebbe says. You break a taiva from one you made two. What says from one you made two? There's two ways of breaking a taiva. One way of breaking a taiva is with compassion. Compassion means you validate it. You even appreciate it and respect it. And then you could put it in its place. Yes. Part of my journey in life, the Moirei Nayim, Habola Tamei Poischin Loi. Parshas Vayishlach, we learned. You remember? Habola Tamei Poischin Loi. Yes, temptation is part of my journey. This is it. I don't have to run. God is here too. God is not only in heaven. Al Aretz Mitachas Hashem Hu Elokim. The mashal is also the nimshal. The levush is also divine. The Nisayan's outer garment is also divine. Verstehst? And then you could reach the Havaya and the Elikim. Paradoxically, if you delegitimize the mashal, you'll never get to the nimshal. If you delegitimize Elikim, you also won't get to Havaya, because Havaya is an Elikim.
This is what Ron did also.
Then you can go to the next level. Then there's the next level. The oilam is chaps what I'm saying? Huh?
But he doesn't mention the intermediate level. The Maamar just talked about the dveikus aspect.
We need a muscle together.
When he talked about dealing with Nisayan, he talks about going to the dveikus aspect. He didn't. I don't think he mentioned what we.
That's the ultimate. When you learn the whole discussion, let's go back to the Talmud. How does the student get to the original oir? Does the student say, I don't know what the teacher said, Meshalim, I'm not into Meshalim, I'm not into stories, I'm not into Tzimtzumim. Tell me what you really have to say. What does the Talmud end up with? Garnished. For 40 years, he deals with Meshalim, but he unravels. That's the Chiddush of Hashem Hu Elokim. Chiddush of Hashem Hu Elokim is not only that there's no Elokim, the Chiddush is that Elokim is also Havaya. Havaya Elokim doesn't, so there's no Elokim. That's not what we're saying. So let's now be very practical. When I'm experiencing an emotion, you speak about a temptation. Or something that's distancing me from where I want to be. The real advice is not, if you don't have it, you don't have it. If you did Ebed B'zush, I know, you're in a different, you lechatchila don't see the world that way. Granted. There are neshamas that their elikim is much higher. They went through very little tzimtzumim. Fine. And if you're that neshama, you're that neshama. And it's truth. But when people start saying, Kabbalah Yisurim Ba'ava means no pain. And what does it mean to be a good Jew? No temptation. No temptation. That's not true. What does the Gemara say? Mashcheu lebeis hamedrash. Barasi Yetzahara, Barasi loy Torah Tavlin. What's Pshat Torah Tavlin? So Gemara says, he's a maneuver, the Yitzhar is a maneuver, Moshcheya lebeis HaMedrash. Take him to the Beis HaMedrash. What's that Moshcheya? So some people think you learn another blot Gemara, all temptations will fall away. Halavai. From my experience, ain't happening. At least not for you. Are there people who would sit in Beis Medrash like that? Of course there are people. But you got to know if you're one of those people, and if you're not, by saying to yourself that you are, you'll have a bigger nefillah, not a smaller nefillah. Moshchehu lebeis hamedrash. Ooh. Moshchehu, bring him in the Beis Medrash. Don't fear your taiva. The taiva also has a place in Beis Medrash. Why do you think God is so small? God could be found in your taiva too, not by worshiping the taiva, by acknowledging it and saying, yes, this is what I am now going through. What's my avodah now? Now you can actually subdue it. You can confront it. You could say no to it. Because you said yes, you could say no. If you don't acknowledge it, now you have a double pain. Now there's the pain of the fact that you're such a bad Jew that you're having these things, plus the taiva. Plus, because you repress it, it's probably going to come out in vicious ways, unconsciously. Because you didn't make space for it. It's there. Just going to come out. It's going to trick you. Suddenly, in the middle of Shachas, in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei, boom! But if you get up to davening, you acknowledge, yeah, this is it. This is part of my avodah. God is here. Now you can actually go to the next step. So there's two types of ways of breaking a taiva. There's breaking a taiva and it just becomes two. You broke it, you made it bigger. Like the frog in Mitzrayim, you know? It's much like the frog.
What is he really looking for, the Tiferes, the next level?
Yeah. That's already, you have to know if you're there. You have to know if you're there. Not everybody could look at Eishes Potifar and say, let me go to Yaakov Avinu. I'm not interested in Yaakov Avinu. I'm interested in Eishes Potifar. You understand? Yosef was interested in Yaakov Avinu, so he could go from Potifar to Yaakov, Muzdi Yoikma. I'm not interested in Yaakov Avinu, at least not now. I'm interested in Eishes Potifar. And not Eishes Potifar the way she's in Atzilus. I couldn't care less for her over there. If I care for her the way Atzilus, I have Atzilus is better than Eishes Potifar. I care for Eishes Potifar the way she's here. What happens now? Now you need Vayemoin. So the Shinavirav writes, the Divrei Yecheskel writes, the son of the Tzanza, Vayemoin has a Shalshelis. So he said, why a Shalshelis? Val Yosef had gesagt, nay. And of course he said it in Yiddish to Eishes Potifar. It wouldn't sound good in any other language. I don't think he said nyet, maybe. Or no, or loy. Nay. He had to, the Shinavirav says, nay. Vayemoin. Then we go to the next step, which will Be'ezer Hashem continue to explore.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.